opportunity to vote on it. But as we go into conference, I will strenuously argue this point. It is a major flaw, I believe, in an otherwise very strong bill. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized for as much time as he may consume.
I'm not as good as my friend in characterizing or talking about something, so I would just like to read from the bill what it actually says. The United States military should not maintain an indefinite combat mission, in Afghanistan, and should transition to a counterterrorism and advise and assist mission at the earliest practicable date, consistent with conditions on the ground. In order to reduce this uncertainty and to promote further stability and security in Afghanistan, the President should fully consider the International Security Assistance Force Commander's assessment regarding the need for the United States to maintain a significant combat presence through 2013. And finally, maintain a force of at least 68,000 troops through December 31st, 2014, unless fewer forces can achieve the United States objective. This is the policy that has been established by the Commander-in-Chief in consultation with the generals and the field commanders. Now, I met with General Allen, the commander in Afghanistan, about a month ago, and I asked him how many troops he needed. And he said he was in the process of evaluating. He didn't have a number yet. When he got that number, he would send it back through the chain of command to the Commander-in-Chief. At that time, if he finds, after his assessment, that he may be able to withdraw troops sooner or may be able to accomplish his mission with less than 68,000, I would imagine the Commander-in-Chief will want to change his policy. And this allows for that, because if the Commander-in-Chief, in consultation with the commander in the field, says that we can do it with fewer forces to achieve the objective, that's exactly what the bill says. Reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves his time. The gentleman from Washington.
I would just say that no part of the President's plan calls for having at least 68,000 troops through December 31st, 2014. If you struck that out of the bill, that would change things. But having that number in there makes an enormous difference. And with that, I'll yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise in support of this amendment. It includes my amendment prohibiting the Defense Department from purchasing helicopters, directly or indirectly, for the Afghan security forces from any entity controlled, directed, or influenced by Russia, any other state that provides weapons to Syria, or other state sponsors of terrorism. It also requires that any such future contract be competitively bid. The UN estimates more than 9,000 people in Syria have been killed by the Assad regime since violence began there. The Russian state arms dealer, Rosoboron Export, continues to provide that regime with the means to perpetrate widespread, systematic attacks on its civilians, including signing a deal with Damascus in January to supply Syria with 36 combat jets. Incredibly, the Defense Department is purchasing 21 Mi-17 helicopters for the Afghan security forces through a no-bid contract with that Russian company, even though it supplies arms to Syria and it was for years on the U.S. sanctions list for providing illegal nuclear assistance to Iran. U.S. taxpayers should not be spent providing helicopters to the Afghans from a foreign country that perpetrates terrorism. The dollar should be spent on American systems that create jobs here at home.
The gentlelady has expired. Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Grimm.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise today in support of my amendment We know that the DoD faces a difficult challenge in balancing cuts with our national security strategy. However, the proposed elimination of 2 National Guard WMD civil support teams poses tremendous risk. These teams are highly trained units that provide rapid support to civil authorities. Of special concern is the proposed elimination of the 24th CST located in New York City. This team has been instrumental in contingency preparations for high-profile activities like massive sporting and political events to national holidays. They have also responded to numerous crisis situations, and my amendment, which offered by my colleagues Representatives Tonko, Bilirakis, and Castor, simply changes the authorized number of teams from 55 to 57, bringing this in line with the current number of active teams. Making sure in New York City, a top terrorist target, has the assets needed should we face another terrorist attack is vital, and I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Altmaier.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chairman, in March, NBC News ran a story about a soldier who was charged $41 for a 3-second voicemail he left his wife from a payphone at an airport in Germany. This is simply outrageous. For service members in transit to and from deployment, a quick phone call from an airport payphone is often their only link to loved ones at home. Because public phones in foreign airports may not accept prepaid calling cards, service members have to accept whatever cost the payphone service charges in that particular airport. It's important that we help provide that crucial link for our service members during this time of transit. My amendment would direct the DoD to submit a report on the feasibility of providing telecom services to service members in transit to overseas deployment and to investigate allegations of overcharging service members. The brave men and women of our armed forces deserve better than a $41 3-second call. I encourage all members to support my amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields back his time. The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I inquire as to how much time I have left.
The gentleman from Washington has 2 1/4 minutes remaining.
2 1/4 minutes remaining. I yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Frank.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 2 1/4 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that illustrates an old saying, adding insult to injury. The insult is the terms under which we are debating this vast commitment of taxpayer dollars to the most important issue we have, defense. People will be debating at 11 o'clock tonight, in 5 minutes on the side, very significant issues. We had a few minutes to debate the question of Afghanistan. My colleague Ms. Lee and some Republicans will join to try to bring this budget number down to where it should be, $8 billion at least, back to the number of the agreement. And they will have 5 minutes in which to do it. That's outrageous. Also, it's important to note, if this bill goes through, it is a statement that efforts to improve the quality of life at home will be sacrificed to foreign adventures that are ill-fated in many cases. I read a letter from the chairman of the committee to the Secretary of Defense who said, Mr. Secretary, if we increase spending here, it won't come out of other national security accounts. Of course not. It will come out of Medicare. It will come out of Medicaid. It will come out of efforts to protect the environment. It will come out of police on our streets. There is an excess of money here. Afghanistan is a good example. A commitment of 68,000 troops. The gentleman from California complained about what the gentleman from Washington said. Sounded the same to me. They put down 68,000 troops, dictating to the commander-in-chief, or trying to, what it should be. There is an effort going on in Afghanistan which is gone far beyond what was justified by our national security. There is a commitment to spend more than is necessary on nuclear weapons when the military hasn't asked for them. There are weapons systems here the Pentagon didn't want. And where does it come from? It comes from everything we try to do to improve the quality of life at home. This is an attack on our ability to provide the funding that America needs for a decent set of conditions here. No one is opposing adequate national defense. This continues a pattern of overspending. And I remember again what Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal said, hailing the Republican budget, of which this is a carrying it out. It protects defense so they can cut Medicare and Medicaid and other domestic programs. It is too bad that we don't have a decent amount of time to expose the extent to which that is going on.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman from California. Gentleman from Washington's time has expired.
How much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman has 3.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself such time as may remain.
The gentleman is recognized for such time as he may consume.
I don't quite know where to start. We have just cut in this budget and in the previous Deficit Reduction Act $487 billion and another $500–600 billion that kicks in with sequestration next January. So that over the next 10 years, we'll be cutting $100 billion a year out of defense at a time when we're fighting a war. You know, in my lifetime, I have seen us cut back after every war so that we won't be prepared, I guess, for the next one. And what happens when we get into the next conflict, being not prepared and having run our military down, we end up losing a lot of people. And I do not want to see that happen if there's any possible way that we can overcome it. I was in a meeting in the Pentagon a couple of months ago when the Secretary was laying out this budget, and a senior military officer, one of the highest ranking in our country, was sitting across the table from me. When he looked at me at the end of the meeting, he said, "In my 37 years in the military and doing this, I have never seen a time more serious, more dangerous than right now." You know, we're facing possible nuclear weapon in Iran. Much of the terrorism that we see around the world is nurtured and paid for and embraced and sent forth from Iran. We have the problem we know in North Korea. We have problem of China that's increasing their defense spending and pushing us further back in helping us defend Taiwan and other commitments that we have in the area. We had the Arab Spring that nobody had thought about or planned on. And where is the next hot spot going to be? We do not know. But I guarantee you that when you run down your defenses, that's when somebody will take advantage. President Reagan said we should have peace through strength. General Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, we hear a lot the quotes about beware the military-industrial complex. He also said our military, our strength, our people in the military are the ones that keep us safe. And we should be so strong that no one ever should dare attack us for fear of being annihilated. It's when we run down those forces, as we had. I remember I was at the Reagan Library recently, and they showed a little video of when President Reagan ran in 1980. And you might recall that we had hostages in Iran that had been causing lots of problems for President Carter. And we tried to send the military on a mission, and they couldn't even fly across the desert with the equipment that we had at that time. We had a hollowed-out military. We do not want to go there at this point. Half of the savings that we have taken in deficit reduction have come out of the military. We've done this on the back of our troops when they account for less than 19% of the overall spending. If we had no discretionary spending, we would be running a deficit of $500 billion a year. That's no military spending, no education spending, no spending on our parks. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman, California yields back his time. All time has expired. The question is on the amendment en bloc offered by the gentleman from California, Mr. McKeon. As many hours in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment en bloc is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 4 by Mr. Rohrabacher of California. Amendment number 5 by Ms. Lee of California. Amendment number 6 by Mr. Connolly of Virginia. Amendment number 7 by Mr. Rooney of Florida. Amendment number 8 by Mr. Bartlett of Maryland. Amendment number 11 by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts. And Amendment number 12 by Mr. Polis of Colorado. The Chair will reduce to 2 minutes for the time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 4, printed in the House Report 112-485 by the gentleman from California, Mr. Rohrabacher, on which further proceedings were postponed and which noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in House Report number 112-485, offered by Mr. Rohrabacher of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
For the last 3.5 hours, the House has had under consideration a number of amendments to the Fiscal Year 2013 Defense Authorization Bill. This is a bill that authorizes $643 billion for defense programs in the next fiscal year. That's $3.6 billion more than the President's request. It's $8 billion more than the cap for defense set last year by the Budget Control Act. They've been debating a number of amendments under the rule. 142 amendments will be considered. Some have been considered en bloc, and a number of those have been passed earlier as en bloc amendments. A series of 6 or 7 votes here, starting with the amendment by Dana Rohrabacher of California. His amendment would prohibit any use of the funds for assistance for Pakistan in fiscal year 2013. This is a 15-minute vote. All of the following amendment votes will be 2-minute votes, and we expect the House to continue with amendment debate later this evening and into tomorrow as well. Earlier, though, the House, one of the amendments they took up this afternoon was an amendment by Barbara Lee of California, which would call for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. We're to show you some of that debate during this 15-minute vote.
Chair, first let me just say this. It is just downright outrageous that the McGovern-Jones amendment was ruled out of order by the Rules Committee, denying this House the opportunity to debate and vote on their amendment. Secondly, we really do need a clear and 2-day at least debate, not 20 minutes on this critical issue of Afghanistan. So for the life of me, 20 minutes is not long enough, and I don't quite understand why, in fact, the McGovern-Jones amendment was not given the full amount of time, because the American people deserve to hear both sides of this issue from a variety of policy perspectives. My amendment today would put a responsible end to combat operation in Afghanistan by limiting the funding to the safe and orderly withdrawal of U.S. troops and military contractors. And I have to thank the co-sponsors of this bipartisan amendment, Representatives Jones and Conyers, Paul, Woolsey, Welch, Nadler, and Hastings, and all of our colleagues who have worked on this issue throughout the years to responsibly end the war in Afghanistan. I have offered this amendment in the past, and it has been a bipartisan amendment. It's clear that the American people have been far ahead of Congress in supporting an end to the war in Afghanistan. My amendment allows Congress the opportunity to stand squarely with the war-weary American people who want to bring our troops home. The call has been growing across this land to bring this war to an end. It's time now for the Congress to answer the call here today. The reality is that there is no military solution to the war in Afghanistan. Our brave troops have done everything that was asked of them and more. As the daughter of a military veteran, I also know firsthand the sacrifices and the commitment involved with defending our nation. But the truth is that they have been put in an impossible situation. There's no military solution, and it's past time to end the war and to bring the troops home. Over a decade now, over $500 billion spent in direct costs, and mind you, not a penny of it has been paid for. Instead, we should have been investing in jobs and our economy here at home and a smarter national security strategy. It is time to say enough is enough. With almost 2,000 United States troops killed in Afghanistan and many tens of thousands more maimed with injuries both hidden and visible, we must recognize that the boots-on-the-ground strategy in Afghanistan must end. It's critical to our economy and the future of this country that we stop pouring billions on a counterproductive military presence in Afghanistan. The American people have made it clear that the war is no longer worth fighting, not for another year, not for another 2 years, and surely not for another 12 years. Today, Congress should stand with 7 out of 10 Americans who oppose the war in Afghanistan. After 11 long years, it is time to bring our troops home. We can do that responsibly by voting yes on the Lee Amendment today. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. For purposes, gentleman from California seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 10 minutes.
This time I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, the Vice Chairman of the Committee, Mr. Thornberry.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And essentially, this amendment says get out now. Leave Afghanistan regardless of the consequences. And I appreciate the honesty, the forthright nature of this amendment offered by the gentlelady from California. It is better to say up front what you are trying to do rather than to put various conditions on it or to tie our troops' hands in some way or to not put enough troops in the field in order to accomplish the mission we ask them to do. This is very clear. It says leave now. And it is tempting for all of us because we have been there for a while. I want our troops to leave as soon as possible, consistent with national security. And as a matter of fact, the underlying bill says that the United States military should not maintain an indefinite combat presence in Afghanistan and should transition to a counterterrorism and advise and assist mission at the earliest possible date, consistent with the conditions on the ground. And that's really the difference, consistent with the conditions on the ground. I believe you've got to take account what the situation is there. And you cannot just abandon Afghanistan and stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not going to have consequences. I think it's important to remember why we're there to begin with. We're not there because of them. We're there because of us. We're there to make sure that Afghanistan is no longer used as a safe haven, as a base from which will be used to launch attacks against us. That's the crux of the matter. As soon as they are able to provide for their own security and prevent a return of the Taliban, a return of al-Qaeda, then we can go. And we will have accomplished our mission, and they'll have to sort through their domestic issues on their own. But if we leave too early, and al-Qaeda and the Taliban return and use it as a base to launch attacks against us, then I'm afraid more Americans will suffer, and we could see repeats of past terrorist attacks. So, as tempting as it is, Mr. Chairman, we cannot ignore the consequences of our actions. Leaving too fast would be bad for our security.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Congresswoman Woolsey.
The gentlelady from California, Ms. Woolsey, is recognized for 2 minutes.
I rise today in support of my friend Barbara Lee's amendment. Let's look at the facts. 2/3 of Americans oppose our military occupation of Afghanistan. So, if the American people were to vote on this amendment today, it would pass overwhelmingly, with support from both Democrats and Republicans. After nearly 11 years, Mr. Chairman, enough is enough. Congress must catch up to the people they represent and embrace a responsible end to this war. Instead of dumping $10 billion a month into an unwinnable war, let's redirect our resources towards a smart security approach. Let's invest in people. Let's invest in development. Let's invest in humanitarian progress. Let's bring our troops home. Vote yes on the Lee Amendment. Vote yes for smart security. Vote yes for the American people. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
At this time, Mr. Chairman, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, member of the committee, Mr. Conaway.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the chairman yielding the time. I stand in opposition to this amendment. My colleague stated it very well earlier. This is simply just get out now. And my colleagues across the aisle in support of this amendment have continued to use the word responsible over and over, and there's nothing responsible about abandoning the efforts in Afghanistan today without the proper conditions on the ground. The President has a plan in place. Some of us may have had differing ideas with him, but he put a plan in place that says our combat troops will be out of there by 2014, contingent with the conditions on the ground. The Afghan people are responsible for their own security, and we're trying to help them get to that place with the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Police, the Afghan Local Army. Those efforts are going on across the provinces of Afghanistan as we speak, and they're getting into the lead to take care of their security. But abandoning of Afghanistan today would put at risk 27 million Afghanis who are counting on us to get this right, counting on us to put them in a position to be able to defend themselves when we do leave in 2014. So getting out now, Mr. Speaker, is irresponsible rather than responsible. Now, I understand all of us are tired. All of us are weary. None of us like to go to those funerals. I go to the funerals of the young men and women who've been injured and killed in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I stand with those moms and dads and husbands and wives on the worst day of their lives. I understand it's grinding grief that's associated with it, but there's a pride also attached to that their loved one gave their life for something positive, for something good, that 27 million Afghanis could create a government that would allow them to rule themselves and not have the thugs of the Taliban do what they did in the mid-90s, come in and slaughter all the thoughtful people, all the teachers, all the folks who lead in order to subjugate that people in ways that are just horrendous. They will do that again to anyone who has helped us over this last 10-year period. So we do have a responsibility there. The responsibility is to get out when the conditions on the ground say it's time to get out. The NATO is meeting this weekend in Chicago to determine ongoing conditions of what's going to be done with respect to their commitments, and this amendment would undermine all of those efforts that be going on there. So I stand in opposition to the amendment. I encourage my colleagues to vote no on this amendment.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to yield now 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady from California and appreciate that ending America's longest war over 10 years is not an unreasonable notion, because there is a serious misunderstanding going on about this amendment on the other side. Withdrawing United States troops does not mean we're abandoning Afghanistan. Please, there's a difference. There are other ways that we can continue to develop the diplomatic and political solutions that can't be won at gunpoint. Don't you get it? How many, if we're leaving in 2014, we're just saying, let's speed it up, let's begin a rational withdrawal, and we have a responsibility to keep a commitment to Afghanistan. It doesn't mean troops, it doesn't mean our military has to die. And I thank the gentlelady for yielding.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes at this time. The gentleman from Florida, member of the committee, a gentleman who has led troops in battle, Mr. West.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to speak. And I will say this one thing. I've been in Afghanistan for 2.5 years, and having been a ground combat commander, I say one thing. If this amendment were to pass, where it says this amendment would restrict the authorization and use of funds for continuation of combat operations in Afghanistan. Just today, in the Farah province, where I've been to, the Taliban attacked an Afghan government compound, killing 7 people. What you are telling to our men and women in combat, what you are saying to the enemy is that we are going to leave those men and women hanging, that we are not going to provide them the resources. Now, I see where this amendment says it does not prohibit or restrict the use of funds available for the U.S. to carry out diplomatic, humanitarian, development, or general reconstruction efforts. One of the problems that we have had in Afghanistan is that we got involved in nation building, we got involved in occupation-style warfare, and truly not being involved in counterterrorism style of warfare and going after the enemy. This is where our primary focus should be. And we have generals that are on the ground that know what they're doing. They've been to Staff College. They've been to War College. Why is it that we don't want to listen to the people that we have placed trust and confidence in to lead our men and women in combat? They have been told in 2014 that we will be drawing down and leaving Afghanistan. Why in God's name would we want to repeat some of the horrible things that I saw my older brother go through in Vietnam, where we restricted funding, and the next thing you know, you had the killing fields of Pol Pot? I'm telling you, I've been in Afghanistan. I know this enemy. And I don't see anyone over there, my dear colleagues on the other side, that I would trust more than General Allen, who is on the ground, who knows what he has to do. The message that you send to our troops is that you're abandoning them. The message that you send to the Taliban, to Al-Qaeda, to the Haqqani Network, to LET, to every single radical Islamic group is that we have turned our backs on our military, and you can continue to kill them. And I just want to say one simple thing. 2 weeks ago, I went to the memorial service for PFC Michael J. Metcalf of Boynton Beach, Florida, who was laid to rest today in Arlington. I will not turn my backs on those men and women who are still my friends, some of them even my relatives. And I ask that my colleagues do not vote for this amendment. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from California.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentlelady from California has 4.5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from California has 4 minutes remaining.
Okay, let me just yield myself 30 seconds and just respond to the gentleman from Florida and just say this amendment, I think he's probably not reading the amendment that I have offered. What this amendment does is restrict our funding for the purpose of the safe and the orderly withdrawal from Afghanistan of all members of the armed forces and the Department of Defense. It is not a cut-and-run amendment. This is a force protection amendment. It would bring our young men and women out of harm's way, and it would provide the resources to move forward to help stabilize the region. I'd like now to yield a minute to the gentlelady from Hawaii, Congresswoman Hanabusa.
Hawaii is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise to speak in support of the Lee Amendment. When I was in the Hawaii State Legislature, we were the only state that did a Hawaii Medal of Honor, and the fortunate part about it is we gave those medals to the spouses and the families and the friends of those who had fallen in Iraq and Afghanistan, as long as they had some connection to Hawaii, either serving at one of our bases or being from there. And when I went through that proceeding, I said, you know, as soon as we can, and I believe the time has come for us, we must safely remove our troops and the civilian personnel because we owe it to them. It is not a matter of whether or not we are abdicating or we are turning our backs on them. They have done what they were sent there to do. 11 years of fighting. Osama bin Laden is dead. The people of the United States know that. And they are asking us to remove the men and women. Don't continue them in harm's way because we have done what we told them that they were sent there to do. And that is why I stand in support of the Lee Amendment. I yield back.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from Illinois, member of the committee, Air Force pilot, Mr. Kissinger.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, leadership isn't easy. These are lessons that we learn all through history. We learned it from Abraham Lincoln when he had to face a union that was dissolving. I learned it in officer training as a pilot in the military, and I learned it in my experience overseas. Think of the sacrifice that our troops have made in Afghanistan. Now, we understand it's been too long, but think of the sacrifice they've made. And now we're getting ready, very quickly with the passage of an amendment, if this passes, to say we're just getting out. We're not going to leave the commanders on the ground with the authority to say how we do it or what we do. What are we going to say to our troops if this passes? And what are we going to say to Bibi? Bibi is a young woman in Afghanistan who at the age of 12 was sold into slavery because somebody committed a crime in her family and the Taliban required her to be sold into slavery. She escaped and had her nose and ears cut off. Her uncle and her family turned their back on her as she tried to crawl to safety, and she went to an American forward operating base where she was granted safety and freedom. What are we going to say to Bibi when we pick up and say, you know what, we've had enough, we're just going to pick up and leave today? This is a big deal, and I would urge my colleagues to oppose this ill-thought-out amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have remaining?
Gentlelady from California has 2 minutes remaining. The gentleman from California has 3 minutes remaining.
2 minutes. I'd like to yield now 1 minute to the gentlelady from Texas, Congresswoman Jackson Lee.
The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
I'd like to thank the gentlelady for a very thoughtful amendment, and I again acknowledge the amendment that both Mr. Smith and Mr. McGovern had. And clearly what this is an opportunity for the American people to speak through their representatives here on the floor of the House. None of us want to promote the killing of women, the cutting off of ears, the mutilization of anyone. I have founded and chaired the Afghan caucus. I've gone to Afghanistan many times. I've delivered books to their schools. What we are suggesting is that the precious blood of our soldiers, first going there after the horrific incident of 9/11, they, after 10 years, have given the fullest measure. And what we're suggesting is that we bring them home safely and orderly, and that we begin to use the diplomatic resources, we enhance NATO, we make sure that we work with our allies, and we have the Afghan National Security Forces stand up. That's what we're saying. We've given enough ribbons and hero awards because we know that our soldiers would not step away. They want to be there with their comrades. But it is important for us as members of Congress who make decisions to send young men and women into war to make a decision that their job is well done and that Afghanistan begin to, in essence, develop their democratic processes and begin to have their national security forces and their police officers stand up. Enough killing of our soldiers by internal acts by Afghan police and soldiers. Let us bring them home now in an orderly way. God bless our troops and God bless the United States of America.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I yield 1 minute to my friend and colleague, the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Pierce.
The gentleman from New Mexico is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I flew combat missions in Vietnam in 1971, 72, and 73. I was there when members of this House voted to cut the funds to troops in combat. I'm hearing the words safe and orderly withdrawal. Has anyone on the other side looked at the safe and orderly withdrawal that occurred in Vietnam? As we fell head over heels, we left 574 combat-ready aircraft there. That was the safe and orderly withdrawal we had when this body began to manage Vietnam. We lost the Vietnam War because we took the control of the war away from the generals and placed it into this body, people who had never been in combat, who had never been in harm's way. And I'm telling you, as someone who was there during a time when Congress choked off the funds to people that were in harm's way, I had a burning anger that burns today. And when I see this amendment and visualize the young men and women over there who you're cutting funds off and saying, we're going to leave you with an orderly and quiet withdrawal, it's not humanly possible. The other side doesn't play by your orderly rules. Understand that this is war, and our troops' lives are at risk, and you're putting them more so. Yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
I'd like to reserve the balance of my time and yield to the
Gentlelady from
other
California
side.
reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Could I ask the time remaining?
The gentleman from California has 2 minutes remaining. The gentlelady from California has 1 minute remaining.
And I have the right to close?
The gentleman from California has the right to close.
I'll reserve.
The gentleman from California reserves.
Wow.
Gentlelady from California.
Okay, let me just first say that I appreciate this 20-minute debate, but we should have a couple of days to be able to have a full debate on why we need to, one, protect our troops and provide for their safe and orderly withdrawal. The American people are war-weary. We need to reunite our brave men and women in uniform with their families at home. We should transfer the billions of dollars that we're spending on war to creating jobs here at home. We should ensure that our troops are provided with the resources that they deserve and they need during this withdrawal. We're asking for a safe and orderly withdrawal. We're saying our young men and women have fought. They've done everything we've asked them to do.
The nays are 335 and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 5. committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise? I'll get order.
Mr. Chair.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Chairman, to speak out of order for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized. The gentleman will suspend. Committee will be in order. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. A couple of days ago, we had the 20th Annual Congressional Sportsman's Shootout. I'm pleased to say for the majority side of the aisle that we actually were able to return the trophy back to our side, to my good friend Mike Ross, who has fled the room somewhere. He was supposed to be standing over here ready to speak about, oh, there he is. Hi, Mike. I want to say nice try. We had a great day raising money for the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation, a foundation that helps fund educational opportunities for young people to learn about hunting and fishing and conservation. And this is one of the great bipartisan things that we do as a group. And with that, Mike, I would also like to say we will miss your enthusiasm as you leave this body for hunting and the outdoors. And I yield to my good friend Mike Ross from Arkansas.
Gentlemen will suspend. Committee will be in order. Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Florida, and let me just say that the Congressional Sportsman's Caucus is one of the largest bipartisan caucuses within the Congress. I think the work we do together is very important, and at a time when there's so much that divides us, this is something that so many of us are able to come together and be united on, and I want to thank everyone that participates and helps make it the largest bipartisan caucus or one of the largest, if not the largest, bipartisan caucuses in the Congress. Let me just, to my friend from Florida, now that he gave me a little kind jab, let me just make the point that the Democrats have won the annual ski, trap, and sporting clay competition for the last 3 years, and we were feeling bad about it. And so we decided that this year we would make sure that all of our shotguns had a full choke and one arm tied behind our back to try to make it more fair. And obviously, maybe we shouldn't have tied our arm behind our back, and we congratulate you on your victory this year, and we look forward to next year as well for those that are returning.
I thank you very much, and
back.
I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the top gun of the day, Duncan Hunter. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Without objection, 2-minute voting will resume. The unfinished business is on a request for a record vote on Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-485 by the gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report Number 112-485, offered by Ms. Lee of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
And voting resumes on amendments to the 2013 Defense Authorization Bill, a bill that authorizes $643 billion for defense programs and policies in the next fiscal year. In the previous vote, we showed you the debate from earlier. On the Lee amendment, Barbara Lee's amendment does say that funds made available to carry out this act for operations of the armed forces in Afghanistan shall be obligated and expended only for purposes of providing for the safe and orderly withdrawal from Afghanistan of all members of the armed forces and Department of Defense contractor personnel who are in Afghanistan. It's a 2-minute vote, and five other 2-minute votes will follow this, all of them amendment votes.
On this vote, the ayes are 1/3. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 6, printed in House Report 112-485 by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, on which further proceedings were postponed, at which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in House Report number 112-485, offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in favor of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members record their vote by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
The rule to the 2013 Defense Authorization Bill provided for the consideration of 142 amendments. They've been debating those amendments for the past 3.5 hours or so. Votes on 7 of them here. This is an amendment by Jerry Connolly of Virginia, which would prevent funds to the Coalition Support Fund until the Pentagon certifies that Pakistan has opened ground line communications and is allowing NATO to move supplies through Pakistan into Afghanistan.
The yeas are 412, the nays are 1. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 7, printed in House Report 112-485 by the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rooney, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in House Report number 112-485, offered by Mr. Rooney of Florida.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, recorded voters ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic devices. It's a 2-minute vote.
Florida Republican Tom Rooney's amendment to the 2013 Defense Programs and Policy Bill would direct the Defense Department to hold detainee trials in the U.S. military facility at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and not in the United States. It's a 2-minute vote. Earlier today on the House floor, they passed a bill expressing the sense of the House regarding the importance of preventing the government of Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapons capability, a bill proposed by Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ileana Ross-Layton of Florida. The Senate also was to take up an economic sanctions bill by unanimous consent. Leader Reid sought to introduce that, but Republicans blocked that. Senate Republican Leader Mitch McConnell said his staff did not receive a draft of the bill until late on Wednesday and needed more time to review it. Both of those measures coming up a week before talks are set to begin in Baghdad next week, the so-called P5+1 talks concerning Iran and its nuclear energy program.
On this vote, the yeas are 249, the nays are 171. The amendment is agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 8, printed in House Report 112-485 by the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Bartlett, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 8, printed in House Report number 112-485, offered by Mr. Bartlett of Maryland.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
And this amendment deals with Pentagon policy concerning federal construction contracts. 2 more amendment votes will follow, and what we expect will happen after that is the House will break from their debate over amendments to the Defense Authorization Bill and pick up 2 Democratic motions to instruct on the highway bill, the conference report over the transportation bill, the motion to instruct by Representatives Barrow and Ray Hall. And that's coming up after this series of votes. Once that's done, we expect the House to resume debate on amendments to the Defense Authorization Bill. That could carry them past midnight, and it certainly will carry them into Friday, when the House, as of now anyway, is expected to gavel in Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern.
On this vote, the yeas are 211, the nays are 209. The amendment's agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 11, printed in House Report 112-485 by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, on which further proceedings were postponed and which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 11, printed in House Report number 112-485, offered by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
Recorded vote has been requested.